Hi everyone. I'm starting a new series this week on the earliest civilizations. We will be looking at the beginning of the world from a Christian and scientific viewpoint. I am Mrs. Calhoun, and you are in the Calhoun Corner. What is science? Science can be defined as the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained, which means you have a hypothesis, you test it, and then you either confirm or deny that your hypothesis was correct. In this lecture, we are going to look at the three theories for the origin of life and apply the scientific approach to those theories. The most popular theory in our world today is evolution. Now, evolution can have two definitions, one meaning change over time. You might say that football has evolved over the decades. No one debates that things do change over time. Things do adapt. People adapt. But when we talk about evolution, as it refers to life, particularly the origin of it, this refers to life coming from something that had no life, and greater forms of life coming from lesser forms of life. Evolution states that these processes happened at random through natural selection and mutations. The next theory is perhaps the greatest minority right now, and that's creationism. Creationism states that God made the world in 6 days, as the Bible said he did. Humans were created with perfection in design, but after the first sin, disease, death, and decay entered the world. Mutations did not make a creature superior to its parents, but often make it inferior. We can think about cancer as being one of the mutations that caused destruction in our world today. The last theory combines the two. This is theistic evolution, which says that God used evolution, which is mutations and greater forms coming from lesser forms, to create human beings and all life on Earth. We aren't going to focus on this one as much because it relies on the same evidence as evolution. You would see the same things even if God was directing them. So let's take a look at this chart. While there are an abundance of fossils, we do not have transitional fossils, or the stages between one species and another. So we have no clear observations of creatures coming from lower forms, excuse me, to greater forms. Furthermore, there are no studies in history that show that they observed this in the fossil record, and for some reason, we lost the data. We do have observers confirming that Jesus used his words to heal people, calm the waves, and make water into wine. Jesus also commands bread and wine to become his body and blood. In experiments, studies have shown that fruit flies, which reproduce very rapidly, have shown adaptation. Remember, that's the original definition I gave you. Change over time, but not one creature coming to another creature. In the studies with fruit flies, they never become anything other than fruit flies. They might change slightly. For example, their eye color or their eyes may change in the way that they adapt to light, but they do not change from a fruit fly to a dragonfly. Experiments on Eucharistic miracles, they have been tested by non-believers working independently, and they have confirmed that the tissues from the Eucharistic hosts come from heart tissue. So it's proving that Jesus is doing what he says. He is transforming his body, or transforming the bread into his body and blood. Looking at this evidence, it is more scientific to believe that God created the world in 6 days rather than through disease, death, and decay over millions of years. If we can accept that, then let's look at another religious claim. The biblical narrative tells us that death only entered the world because of sin. This is in Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Therefore, as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all men sin. We must reject theistic evolution because it would require death. Jesus, however, comes to defeat the death that comes through sin. This is from the University of California. I will put this as a link in the description so you can take a look at it yourself. And when we're looking at this, I want you to pause for a moment and just see if anything strikes you from this. So right now, just pause the video and take a look at this, or open it up in your own browser and take a look. Okay, hopefully you did that. And we can see here we have 1. So if you can look at my pointer here, we're at 1. And 1 says that traits that evolved at step 1 was cells. So at one point there was no cell, and now all of a sudden we have a cell. And we can follow this branch off and we can get to E. coli. And then if we go the other direction, then between 1 and the next step, we've got 2. So the nucleus and organelles develop. And as you see, things go along here. These longer bars, they have different attributes as well. So 12, if we find 12, that's hollow flagella on cells. So that goes with the E. coli as well. One thing that strikes me here is that we are sitting between the monkeys and the chimpanzees. And though we are very genetically aligned, we're also very aligned with the banana. So I don't think that whether we're genetically aligned really has any bearing on this. It really has to do more with what God has infused in us and how he made us in his image and likeness. And that is definitely not shown here in this depiction. This is also different than some other depictions where they say the tree of life, where they have an evolutionary standpoint where one thing becomes another. So here they don't particularly have that. They have things that are still around for the most part. The T-Rex is on there, but that's one of the outliers on this chart here. Generally, they'll have something that becomes extinct, and then you have something that comes from that extinction, which is death as the natural order of our existence.